what have I done? What have I done? I went and become this teacher. I'm doing a bad job at it. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be here, but I'm not reaching a lot of these students who I need to reach. And I just had a lot of doubts, a lot of self-doubt. And I was like, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna quit. Like I was gonna quit.
My father told me life is not a bed of roses. You gotta put your wings.
This is Origins Africa podcast, where we explore the origin stories of people who have made and are making their dreams come true, asking the how, the what, the when, and the why. I'm Osheye, and on this episode, I talk with Ashanti Branch on the origin story of the Ever Forward Club, about how men today have been raised to mask their true selves, and how the Ever Forward Club gives today's young men a chance to get real and move ever forward. In 2012, Chimamanda Adichie gave a TEDx talk. She had said, and I quote, "We do a great disservice to boys in how we raise them. We stifle the humanity of boys. We define masculinity in a very narrow way. Masculinity becomes this hard, small cage, and we put boys inside the cage. We teach boys to be afraid of fear. We teach boys to be afraid of weakness or vulnerability. We teach them to mask their true selves because they have to be, in Nigeria speak, hard man." End of quote. Truth be told, we see the results in the kinds of men we have around us today. Angry on the outside, sad on the inside. We live in a society ridden with toxic masculinity and misogyny. The boys of yesterday have grown up to be men of today who act inhumanly and who wear masks to conceal their true personalities and feelings just to get by. In fact, many men today have lost their sense of identity. As Chimamanda rightfully said, we must raise our sons differently. And that, my dear listeners, is the noble work that Ashanti Branch, the CEO of the Ever Forward Club, has taken on. Ashanti is the founder and executive director of the Ever Forward Club and creator of the Taking Off the Mask workshop. Ashanti, through the Ever Forward Club, helps boys and girls around the world identify and remove their masks. He helps them get in touch with their inner selves and emotions so they can connect authentically with themselves and others. He also helps educators understand and connect with students. Through the Taking Off the Mask workshop, Ashanti challenges leaders and team members to reconsider how they show up at work and transform the way they interact with and relate to each other. The Ever Forward Club started in 2004 in Oakland, California, by providing support for African American and Latino males who were not achieving their potential. Since then, the Ever Forward Club has helped all of its more than 150 members graduate from high school, and 93% of them have gone on to attend 2 or 4-year colleges, military or trade school. One of their graduates has also gone on to receive the Governor's Award. Recently, at a TEDx talk, Ashanti described himself as mama's little boy, having grown up without a father. He had said it was a big part of his life and a wound he was still working on healing from.
You know, when I used that term when I did my TED talk, I was trying to think of like the cure. You know, the person who was helping me kind of work on my talk. We were talking like, well, how do you do a really powerful opening, right? And I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, what is it something that you don't really want people to know? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't really talk about the fact that I'm a mama's boy. And then they were like, use that. And I think was I think growing up was, you don't have a choice. I mean, I think I talked about that as I started exploring that name and that title. Like normally when you hear that title, it's used in a really negative way, right? Like, used in a way of like shaming you, making you feel less than a man, less than, and I think what it was like what I would have rather been daddy little boy, right? You don't have a choice in that matter. What do you do? Like you fall connected to the parent that is parenting you, and that is showing you love and care. And so that happened to be my mom. And so I think without having my father there, I didn't, there was no other person to get attached to. There's like, ideally a child can grow up being attached to two adults who are, nurturing and loving and caring for him. But what if you don't have to? If you only have one, then you just get a deeper connection there, right? There's no way of like having these two people that you look up to and you get to see, and so I think that battle and that journey of just trying to figure it out by myself a lot. I had my grandfather around, my mom's father. So, as I think on the holidays, he would add that extra support, he would, I remember just him, letting us go buy gifts for ourselves. So he put some, he was there in some ways, but he can only be there in so many ways, right? Like I think that's why he was like a father figure, but he had his own family, he had his own family. And so it was a tricky like thing. Like I think there was still that hole, that hole of missing and wanting my father to be there, but I think that my mom did the best she could. She sacrificed her 20s, to like not throw me out to somebody else to raise, and she raised me herself. So, it's a deep gratitude, and I think it's just a connection that you have with someone that I don't know if you can explain it, or you can, it's like it's just really. When I work with a lot of young men who are raised by their mothers, usually there's lots of different relationships always, but sometimes there's a really close connection there, right? Especially the oldest, right? The firstborn, and sometimes the connection may not be so positive, but whether it's a positive or negative connection, it's a deep connection, And so I think that is something that's just unspeakable in terms of young people who are growing up with one parent. Like that becomes your only source of life,
Okay. Now, being the firstborn, I know at 7 years old, you were told by your uncle that you are the man of the house. So you had to take care of your mother, your siblings. You're basically told to be a man without any script on how. Now, how did your 7-year-old self process these then? And how were you able to balance being mama's little boy and then being asked to be the man of the house?
Yeah, that was confusing. First of all, it was confusing when like my uncle was kind of the one who was always, my uncle was the one who told me that. He was the one who would always like throw me up in the air. It was like this roller coaster ride with him. And to like begin believing that I couldn't play with him anymore was a hard thing to do. Like it was like, wait, what do you mean? There was no choice. Like I just wanted to play. I didn't want responsibility like that. I didn't want to be taking care of nobody. I didn't want to be responsible for nobody. I wanted to be able to just be, right? And I think when that all of a sudden you're like, no, you don't get to just be. You get to be responsible. Welcome to the world of responsibility that you don't want. And I think that was challenging in a way that I was like, why me? Like, why do I have to do this other stuff? Why am I always doing stuff, right? I mean, I think it's like the one thing as a child, right? Maybe children want to work and help. I love helping. I grew up with my mom just there, and so I was a helping kind of kid. But you get to a place where now you're helping and you're having to do a bunch of stuff. Like I think I just got to a place like, why am I doing all this extra stuff? Like this like, why am I changing diapers and making formula. I mean, it's like this idea of we're going to get a place from help to like being your responsibility. When you're helping, you're kind of volunteering. When you have a responsibility, you got to do it regardless, you know? I think that early on, I just became like, kind of like, this is a lot of extra stuff. There's a lot of extra stuff. And I was, I don't know, I think about it a lot. I'm like, I have one picture of myself making pancakes, like probably like a Saturday morning, you know, I'm thinking about it. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I used to get up and help make food. And like, it was just like a lot of stuff. Now while it was happening, I don't think I wasn't grumbling through it. Okay. But I remember because part of it, if you did want to grumble through it, you just didn't let it be heard, you know? Yeah, you may not be liking it, but you just deal with it, you know? And I realized I had to just learn how to navigate through it. And it was, I think, I would say if I was going to really express some feelings around it, there were times where I was really angry. There was, because I couldn't go outside and play, you know? I think there was times of sadness, of like why do I have to have all these extra responsibilities, you know? And there was lots of emotions, but I was kind of taught that you don't get to show emotions, and so I just stuffed them. You know, just stuffed them.
Stuffing those emotions, how did that affect you growing up?
Well, you know, I think it's just one of the mentors said to me, like, if you never dealt with it then it still needs to be dealt with. You know, like the stuff that you didn't deal with as a child that are either, you know, traumas or wounds or things that, like, if it didn't get dealt with, you know, you may have like thought about it, but you didn't deal with it. You didn't get to talk it out so that it didn't carry some weight. Then you basically still probably need to talk about it, right? As you begin to talk about it, I think it begins to let go of some of the energy that it carries, right? And so I think, you know, as I think back to a lot of those days of just like extra load, it felt like an extra load. You know, there was I think maybe once or twice or a few times I would be like, I don't want to do all this, but it was quickly like clarified that it doesn't matter what you want, right? This is just the way it is, and you just deal with it. And so I think that it was just like a processing of just like, okay. So now as an adult, as I do a lot of storytelling, I get to like let some of the steam from it go. I get to tell my story, and I think it's a journey. It's hopefully a lesson for young men who are carrying around stuff like that they don't hold it to their, you know, in their adult ages to start talking about it. They talk about it while they're young, so that the steam doesn't, so the pressure doesn't slow them down to their goals. Yeah, and so I think that's where I feel the most work needs to be done around that is, and I think that's why the mentoring program started, because I was looking for it, but I didn't know what to go out and ask for, you know? That I wanted to just be around other young men who I could talk about what I was going through with and not feel ashamed about it. I didn't know that I was looking for like a adult figure who I could, you know, emulate, or just know that I could ask questions to and not be embarrassed about the questions I was asking growing up. And so I think that it was just like what happened in my life. I just started to begin to create what I wish I
Now, there was a point when you were 17 years old that you broke down and you cried. Could you talk about that? Do you know the particular experience that I'm referring to?
I do.
Yeah. Do you want to share that?
Yeah. So I was a senior in high school. I was on my way to college. I had been accepted to one of the top engineering schools in the U.S., and I was Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I was super excited. I was ready. And you know, came home one day from wrestling practice, and her, my mom, and her husband at the time, I'm having an argument, and it was getting a little out of control. I heard my mom like say a phrase that really startled me. Something like I wish you would put your hands on me. And I was like, and as a mama's boy still at 17, like, you know, but more mature and adult, you know, like on my own, kind of managing myself. I ran to her room to kind of see what was going on. And then I saw my mom on the floor. And it was a tough moment because I went into like a rage and I went in to try and, you know, grab this man, and that wasn't effective because he was way stronger than I was. And I ran around the corner to a friend's house, and this friend was not on his way to college. He was not planning to do anything necessarily monumental with his future. But he was a good friend, and we never judged each other based on school or anything. We were just, and I told him to give me a gun. And I got back to my house, in front of my house, and getting ready to grab this paper bag and go inside, I realized that I was about to throw it all away. You know, I was about to throw everything I had worked for all the years I had sacrificed, you know, partying and hanging out and whatever. I worked hard to go to college, and I was about to throw it all away in that moment. And it's because I just saw this right there. I was like, what am I going to do? What am I about to do? Like, I wasn't the kind of kid who handles weapons. I never even touched one before. But at mine, I was like in a rage. And I was taught that I could, as a man, I could show anger. Anger will get you respected, right? But if you show fear is considered weakness. If you show sadness is considered weakness. And if you're a weak man, then you're almost considered, the way society makes you look, is like, oh, I guess you're like a woman. I guess you're like not manly. And therefore, I knew that those emotions couldn't be shown, so I had to show the other one, which was anger and rage and just, you know, like almost being to the point of crazy, you know? It was right there in that moment where I just sat in my car and I cried. You know, I was about to throw it all away, like in seconds, like, you know, like luckily there was no weapon in the house, right? Luckily there was no weapon that I had easy access to that quickly. I had time to go on this journey to go get it, and then finally catching my breath all along, just like I was crying in the car. And I think what I see with a lot of young people, and you know, here in Oakland, it's a rough community, and, you know, almost, you know, if not every year, every other year, another young person, a senior in high school, loses their life, you know, either a kid being killed or something. And I always just think back to like why I keep doing this work is because I was almost that young man, right? And maybe I hadn't killed, but if I was going to pretty much throw my life away. I was going to throw my life away, not because I was a bad kid, but because I had no emotional tools. No emotional tools to deal with sadness or fear, because I wasn't even supposed to have those emotions. So I think that my work began connecting deeply to this idea that if you don't experience these emotions because you're told you're not supposed to have them, and you try and convert them to something else, they're probably going to come out at the wrong velocity, the wrong magnitude, and against the wrong people, right? And I think that's one of the things, those are lessons that I remember learning growing up, you know, like things I saw people do, things I heard older boys say you're supposed to do, you know. I think one is really interesting. I was talking about this the other day. I was like, you know, I was talking to a group of middle school. I said, you know, if you ask a girl for her phone number and she says no, what do you actually feel, right? Well, you can say I feel angry, or you can say I'm embarrassed. But how do we learn how to deal with embarrassment? What do we learn? I didn't learn any good tools on dealing with embarrassment. I learned, well, if you're going to feel embarrassed, you make the other person feel embarrassed. So now you start calling her names. Like, this is silly stuff. This is like, why would you start calling this girl name who didn't give you her number when you wanted her number 30 seconds ago? Now you're calling her name. Well, if you don't have any tools of dealing with embarrassment and the feeling of like not good enough, or what do you do with those feelings? Well, you better learn how to deal with them, because life is going to give you opportunities to feel those often. And if you don't deal with them in a healthy way, you're going to end up trying to always get retribution of this feeling that you think you shouldn't have, you know? And so that's the work that we've been trying to do. If you can't name it, you can't tame it. That's what Mark Brackett at Yale says around your emotions, right? If you can name it, then you can tame it. And so therefore, name the emotion that I'm feeling fear, that I'm feeling sadness. Then I'm like, oh, okay, so what do I do with this sadness? How do I navigate this sadness? As opposed to converting it to anger, because we've learned that, okay, I know what to do with this. I can just prove how tough and cool I am. So those are just like some things that we try and work on, and it's been really beautiful in the work. But it started with me kind of doing some of my work, you know?
Now, growing up, I know that referencing what you just said as well, there was some struggle between what it was or what it meant to be a man in your mom's house and in the streets of Oakland. So how did that affect you growing up? How to balance what your mom expected of what it was to be a man and what the street wanted you to be as a man? How were you able to juggle that, and how did that affect you?
I think that the rules were different, right? I mean, if I think about being a man, like growing up, like I was the man of the house, but I think I was pretty clear. I was clear that I wasn't a man, right? And there were certain decisions I got to make because I had a lot of responsibility, but there was a whole lot of decisions I didn't get to make. I couldn't just decide I want to go do something. You know what I'm saying? Like it was like, yeah, you're man light, right? You got a lot of responsibilities, but you don't get to make any choices, you know? It was kind of like that. But I think the idea is that the streets was like in my mom's house, there was a lot of rules, right? A lot of rules about being kind and respectful and, doing chores and all of these things that were, but I was always her little boy. I don't know if you're ever not your mom's little boy, but I think she never I don't think it was from her. She was like, be a man. I think my uncle gave me that responsibility, and I took it and I wore it, you know? I think that even though I had so many responsibilities to help out and take care of my siblings, I was still kind of outside of the house. There's different rules. You're not kindness and niceness and responsibility and cleaning up after people and washing dishes and folding clothes. That wasn't what people on the streets were saying makes you a man. That was actually being more domesticated than anything, you know? So I think there was these rules, if you want to be a man, you better be tough. You better know how to fight. You better know not let people take advantage of you. You better not be soft. You better not cry. You know, you had to almost shut off parts of your character. Right? You couldn't smile too much. You couldn't want really close friendships. There was the rules that were people had established that were what? This doesn't make any sense. Why? Why not? What's wrong with because if you're smiling, well, you're smiling too much, something must be wrong with you. You're what? Where does that come from? But it's real. And it's if you are a young person who is trying to be just happy and just enjoying somewhat life, people will slowly shut it out of you, or they will force you to question yourself. Why are you pretending to be so happy? You're I don't think I was pretending. I think I was happy, but now we're having this conversation. Maybe I wasn't, right? How do you, the world has a way of trying to make you conform to what they expect you to be. And conforming in my community was definitely the young men I grew up with was better be tough. Better not show how weak you are. You better be ready to fight at any moment. But and I think I just began. I remember having lots of fights in elementary. And in elementary, I fought more than anything. Middle school, I kind of calmed down a little bit. But I remember just having to fight all the time. And the fights were always about proving to somebody that I'm not going to be pushed around, right? I was never the aggressor. I'm not that guy. That was never my character, is to be out looking for a fight. But I would never back down from a fight, you know? So it was one of these things where you just push the right button and it's on. And then once you show your people your button, then they always got your number, you know? So you'd be I had this thing where I would say, look, you can talk about my mother if you want, because I know that what you're saying is not true. But if you talk about my father, then I'm gonna punch you, right? Right? I had this really big button on my chest that was like letting people know how they could get into a fight with me, and I literally was suspended dozens of times. Because I was literally telling people how to make it happen, you know, and it was really wild. It was a wild time. But I was angry. I was angry and I was sad. I was probably, if you say, well, I was sad that I didn't have a father. I really wanted to have a father, and I think that made it really hard. And so I just became really I turned all that sadness, because you can't really show your sadness. And I just became a really angry little boy.
So I guess society does a lot of disservice to how boys are raised.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I definitely can speak for right here in the United States. And I know that when I went to, did this workshop in Lagos with some students there, what I saw on their masks was similar to what we see here in California. On the front, I get to show people that I'm smart and intelligent, athletic and funny and happy and joyful. But on the back, I don't get to talk about the other stuff. I don't get to talk about the fear and the judgment and the sadness and the trauma and the family stuff. I don't get to talk about it. And so I think we bottle it up. We tell our boys, you got to bottle it up, suck it up, until you suck it up so much that you have no more room to suck any more up. And then it's gonna come out, you know. It's gonna come out, you know. And when it comes out with such a flurry, because usually it wasn't just the one thing that set it off. It was all the dozens of things you never dealt with. True. And now they come out, and that is the danger. That's a danger, because the magnitude of that usually is worse than what it needed to be if it was dealt with alone by itself in that one situation, you know? Yeah.
I guess it's time to tell our boys now that it's actually okay to cry. It's okay to feel sad. Because even in Nigeria today, boys are not expected to cry. Even if, for instance, someone died in the family, perhaps the dad or the mom, they would tell the boy not to cry, that boys don't cry.
Wow.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
So they're supposed to stuff those emotions. They just stuff those emotions.
Exactly. And keep it all inside. And they are the ones who now maybe pacify their moms and their sisters perhaps, but they themselves, they cannot cry because the society doesn't expect you to cry as a boy.
Ooh. There's the book I was telling you about from Mark Brackett that it's called Permission to Feel. And there's this one line that I highlighted because it was super powerful. And it talks about this idea of like emotions that are not dealt with I'm gonna just read this one part. It says, the irony though is that when we ignore our feelings or suppress them, they only become stronger. And really powerful emotions build up inside us like a dark force that inevitably poisons everything we do, whether we like it or not. Hurt feelings don't vanish on their own. They don't heal themselves. If we don't express our emotions, they pile up like a debit that will eventually come due. And it's just like that. It's like they pile up, it piles up. And I see it with young men all the time in our work. They're angry. So when you ask them, how you doing, what you feel, like, I don't know. They're like, it's just already in a adversarial mood, right? Even when somebody's there to help them, right? It's like, if somebody's drowning, what they say is you better be careful trying to help somebody who's drowning because they will drown you, you know? And it's not because they're trying to hurt you, it's because they're so afraid that everything they respond to is trying to preserve the life, right? And so the person trying to help them, they're punching them, they're hitting them. They're not really trying to hit you, but they don't know any better. They're just like, I need to be moving to get, right? And I think that when someone's dealing with anger, sadness, fear, trauma, those kind of emotions that are like not being dealt with in healthy ways, You can ask them all day long, hey, how can I help you? They're like, I don't know, but nothing. I don't need nothing. But deep down, they know they need something, right? They know there's an emptiness there, a void. My job in the work is just to keep asking, no pressure. Hey, how you doing? Anything you need? And when they say, I'm good, you say, well, what's good? When they say, I'm fine, what's fine? I'm okay. I'm always about probing deeper, because the first answer is usually the weeding out answer, right? We weed out people who don't really care anyway. And so they give you an answer they think you want to hear, even if it's not, right? And that's been our work. That's been our work, is like giving that opportunity to talk and go deeper. And so when we give them, they finally have the trust that you really want to hear to say. Then they get a chance to open up, and they get to talk about how they're really feeling, and knowing that their feelings are validated, they're not shamed for it, and that you're supposed to feel. And the more you let yourself talk about the things you're really feeling, the more you make sure that you don't get into this space of emotional overload that you can't handle.
Great. So what was the turning point in your life while growing up?
It was I would say probably Miss BP. It was my middle school English teacher, whose class I hated. I hated English, but I loved her. I loved her. Like, so I would always, I think deep down, I really loved her class, but I didn't like English, the subject, right? Like, she was just really supportive and caring. And I think one day she gave me detention, and I went to detention, and I was like really angry because it wasn't even my fault what happened. But in that detention, she was blabbing on. She was talking for a long time. And in one sentence she said that I remember really stuck in with me. And she was like, I know you're sad that your father died before you were born, but life doesn't give you what you want. Life gives you what you get, and you got to make the most out of it. And I think, and I heard that sentence. I heard it. And that sentence changed my life. It was this idea that I had a responsibility to like create the life that I wanted to live, that I had permission to be sad about it, and that like I had to make a choice that I was going to use my father's death not as the thing that would destroy me, but the thing that would inspire me. And I began to use it as a catalyst to say, I don't know what he would have wanted me to be, but I'm going to make sure that when he's looking at me, he will be proud, right? And my context changed. That's a different context than I'm angry that he's not here. How dare him not be here? As that context there only creates more anguish inside of oneself, But a context of how do I make you proud even though you're not here? Absolutely everything. And I got to, from that point on, I was like really super focused on like being successful and giving my best. I didn't know what success was, but I knew about giving my best. And I know at many times I was not in school giving my best. And everything changed after that. I really began to get on track. And that's, I'm sure that was one of the catalysts that really pushed me to get to college.
Okay, that's very deep. So growing up, you had decided that you weren't going to be a teacher. After college, you were making good money as an engineer. But here we are. You're a teacher.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to leave your engineering job?
Well, I started tutoring at this learning center. So, as an engineer, I started making money. I started traveling. And, when I was in college, I had no money. I go making money. And now I'm like, when I go traveling, it was always good to have like extra travel money, So when I got offered this little job to tutor, I was like, fine, I'll tutor. I'll make some extra money. It was like good cash to put in the bank and just sit on the side for traveling. And when I started tutoring at this place I was tutoring at two different places, but when I started tutoring at the Upward Bound program, which is helping first generation students go to college, I really began to take it personal. Like my buddy was like, look, can you come tutor for us on Saturday mornings? I need a math teacher. I'm like, man, I ain't got time for that. I party on Friday nights, you know. I ain't trying to be waking up early on Saturday morning. And he was like, come on, I need somebody to help me with this math. And I'm like, you know, and I was talking to him a while, you know, I wanted to help him, but I was like, look, you got like a couple of months to find somebody else. Because I party on the weekends. Weekends are my time to really have fun, you know? But what I realized was that, you know, I wanted to support him. So I just, you know, I did. I made the sacrifice of not going out on Friday nights to be at this class at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. But I remember after that first class, how there were kids in there who were like not taking it serious. And I'm like, look, I took it kind of personal. Like, first of all, I sacrificed my last night social activities to be here, and you're going to be here goofing off. No, not here with me. And so I was like, why am I taking this so serious? And I was like, you know, like technically Saturday morning, who wants to be really doing a lot of math? I know I wouldn't. I know Saturday mornings was chore day, you know? So I was like, you all are amazing. You all woke up here to be here. But if you're here, you might as well do some work. And I think that's how the work began. I was pushing them to be like, well, if you're here, make the most out of it. Don't throw it away. And this program is going to help you get to college. And I knew that program was helping kids get to college. I was like, you better get your stuff together. And so I was like driving home a couple of Saturdays. And I'm like, I'm taking this really serious. Like, I could just go in there and do nothing. And it wouldn't hurt me, right? Like, I got a job. This is not like my job. This is my little side hustle, right? Like, I mean, if I think about like, if I didn't really care about it, why would I care if kids came in there and did nothing on Saturday mornings? But something inside of me was like starting to like catch fire. And I think that it was in that and working at this other place called the Huntington Learning Center was where I realized this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Like this, and I think I was more afraid and angry because of it. Because I'm like, wait a minute, teaching don't make no money. No money. There's no way. Like, and so I ran from it, you know. But I think that's what was happening. My heart started calling me saying, "Oh, Ashanti, you found it now, right? The thing that makes you come alive, the thing that makes you like fully like recharge on like what is important in the world. Like, yeah, you could be an engineer and build some big buildings and make some cool stuff and get some accolades and some grand opening parties and some nice T-shirts but what does that really matter to the world? Because you build a big building, you know? For some people it matters something, but for me it didn't. It was like, eh. But when you see a young person go from not understanding to understanding, and that spark and that light goes on in their eyes, there is no feeling like it. There's because I was not their classroom teacher. I was a support teacher, so I was teaching them math on the weekends to help them do better in their classes. So they come to me with questions they had and things they were struggling with in class. And I was like, oh, let me make that easy for you. And just to be able to help turn that light on, there's no better feeling. The better feeling I get is when I'm on stage, get to tell my story, and a young person at the end will come up and say, you know, thank you for telling that story, right? I think that's the feeling I get now, since I'm not teaching in a classroom, that you get to help people break free. You know, I think there's nothing better than to be a person who can help others to kind of break free from feeling in bondage, you know? And so, so that's really, wow. That's
Was it an easy decision to make, so you still had your engineering job and then teaching was beckoning? So what did you do next? Because it was definitely a tough decision. So how was it like? What did you do?
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, it was kind of like before I made the decision, I went to a new company. I started making more money, and I thought the money would help. I thought making more money in engineering would make that weird feeling of trying to become a teacher. And so I went to this huge project in Silicon Valley, and it was like really more cutthroat kind of engineering and management stuff. And I was like, it made the desire to become a teacher worse. You know, it made it like more strong. Am I willing to stress over these things, or would I rather be stressing over other things in terms of pressure of job and career? And I wanted to make money. I didn't want to be poor. I wanted to be rich. Like I grew up with very little resources, and so I wanted to live a lifestyle where I could just be like, I could just buy whatever I want. And as an engineer, I pretty much was getting close to that. Like I have enough money for my bills and for fun and for other stuff. Like, growing up with like just having enough to get by. It's a different feeling when you have more than enough to get by. You can save some, you can buy gifts for other people. Like it was just like lots of new things. And so I think it was just a calling, man. I think it was like this thing where you're like, I'm not happy about this. Like how long are you willing to, like, once you acknowledge that, let's say that you were working a job and you didn't know that you weren't happy. You just were like, no, that's what I love to do. Now, maybe you could say that forever, because if you didn't notice it, that you were not happy about it. What happens once you notice that it is not bringing you joy, that you're doing it 5 days a week, 60, 70 hours a week, driving however long you have to drive or commute to work, and you're miserable. You're not miserable. Like, let's say it's not that far. You weren't like, I hate this. I loved engineering. I still love engineering. But it was like, it didn't bring you what you thought that you were looking for in terms of a daily existence. And since you spend most of your week there, then what do? I mean, I know people who have jobs who don't like their jobs, but they stay because they got responsibilities and bills and things to take care of. But what if you didn't have to do that? What if you had the freedom to be like, I get to do whatever it is I want to do to be happy? And I think it was at that moment. And I think a friend of mine was like, look, you're always an engineer, so why don't you just go get this teaching thing out of your system and then come back? And I'm like, oh, that may be a good idea. And I had a friend who just went to the Peace Corps. So I remember when he went off the grid for 2 years to go to Peace Corps. I'm like, oh, God, I was kind of thinking like a Peace Corps thing. And you come back to your career and you're even better at your career. I'm like, all right. It was super powerful. I decided to go the more traditional route. I just went back to school and got my teaching credential and then started teaching. And that's how it all happened. And I couldn't have planned it. Like when I was in college as an engineering student, you never could have told me one day you're going to leave all this and you're going to go teach. I would have been like, somebody's lying here. Somebody's lying, because that ain't going to be me. I would have lost a big bet, because I would have bet you any amount of money that wasn't going to happen. But, I think that's what about life is right? Like, right, when you give yourself a chance to follow your passion, your heart, then you ultimately know that there's way more. There's way more out there for you, and that there's more going on with what you want to do to transform the world than you could do just by scripting it out as a 15, 16-year-old who's like, here's what my life is going to look like. And sometimes you can script it out and it works out perfectly. And sometimes you're like, oh, I don't really like the way that looks. I don't like the way that feels,
Okay. So now you left your job where you're making good money and started teaching. Now, one would have thought that being passionate about it, you'd hit the ground running and be successful at it. But you were failing at it. At that point, what was going through your mind?
What was going through my mind was, what have I done? What have I done? I went and become this teacher. I'm doing a bad job at it. Like, I feel like I'm supposed to be here, but I'm not reaching a lot of these students who I need to reach. And I just had a lot of doubts, a lot of self-doubt. And I was like, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna quit. Like I was gonna quit. And people were like, no, it takes about 2-3 years to get really good at it. I'm like, you mean I gotta be bad at this for 2 years? before I get good at it. Like I gotta be miserable for 2 years. Like, and I had just left a job where I was like, I wasn't miserable. I just wasn't truly happy. I thought this new job was gonna bring me instant happiness, and although it brought me fulfillment, it didn't bring me happy because I was first of all not making much money, and I was like doing a horrible job. So I was like, wait a minute, am I going backwards in my my journey towards success? It felt like I was going backwards because I wasn't feeling more successful, and that's how it all happened. I think the biggest thing was me just figuring out that I had to make some big choices, and that's how Ever Forward started. The nonprofit started. The program started as a first year teacher. I was like, look, I'm not willing to sit here and watch smart kids fail my class, but what I need to try and support them with, I can't support them in the classroom. There's not enough time in the classroom to do it. So I got to do it when they are outside of class. And that's how I just thought of this idea, like, how do I invite them to lunch and start talking to them and figuring out what's in the way. And that's how Ever Forward began to really grow. That's how it started. And then from there, it just really began to grow.
So let's go to Ever Forward Club. What does Ever Forward Club do today, and why is the Ever Forward Club super critical today?
Well, so Ever Forward is a youth development mentoring program. So we have the 3 programs: the Ever Forward Club. That's a program for young men, middle school and high school, providing weekly circles of mentoring for those young men to just grow up and deal with life in a really healthy way. Then we have Ever Forward Professional Development, which is working with teachers and parents and administrators and other people who work with youth in school settings or outside of school settings to really provide them support around becoming more supportive and relevant for students in their support and their success. And then we have these Ever Forward experiences, which is work that we do all over the world. The 100,000 Mask Challenge is one of those. And it's really about outward-facing opportunity. Outward-facing to give young people a chance to explore these masks. And it's like, that's our work, our deeper work.
Could you talk about this mask?
Yeah. So we started... So Ever Forward today is this program, and what we did is we were featured in a documentary called The Mask You Live In, which is about masculinity and how this hyper masculine narrative of being a man is really hurting our boys. And so the feature of the documentary really opened up a lot of doors for us, and we were doing this workshop that we created in the documentary called Taking Off the Mask. And it's about exploring, here is the front of my mask. Here's the things I let people see about me. Here's the back of my mask. Here are the things I don't let people see. And really, how do I really acknowledge those things so that I can recognize that, there's all this stuff about myself that I don't talk about. I don't get to talk to people about. And if I'm doing it, maybe other people are doing the same. So how do we not only have deeper connections to people we know by just being able to ask more meaningful questions, or how do we recognize that everybody we meet is in some ways operating from a concept of a mask? They're only showing you what they want to show you. You're showing them what you want to show them. And if there's no connection there, or if there's some kind of, if it doesn't always match up as a deep connection, then maybe it's because you all are trying to be who the person wants you to be, as opposed to being all of yourself. And so how do we give young people space to deal with that emotional stuff that they don't deal with so that it doesn't come out and explode? I think the mask was finally our way of being able to help young people go deal with the stuff they need to deal with in a healthy way so it didn't come out in unhealthy ways. And I think it was a very good metaphor just to give them an image around it, right? Draw this mask, write these words, and take a look and look at these other masks that are around you. And then you start recognizing you're not alone, right? You're not the only one who's dealing with some real stuff. But if you believe you're the only one dealing with real stuff, then you may not ever like deal with it in a healthy way until it explodes, and then you have to deal with it. But now it's in such a a shambles, you mess things up so bad, and then it's like it's in crisis mode, you know?
Okay. So what's the 100,000 mask challenge?
Okay, the 100,000 mask challenge. The 100,000 mask challenge is a campaign we created. It was connected to this idea of the workshop taking off the mask, because originally we were just doing workshops all over, and I was collecting these masks for some reason because something was really calling me about these masks that we were collecting. And I didn't know why. And then one day we just had this moment where I was like, why don't we give this tool out to educators all over? We will make a goal to collect 100,000 masks. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really know about creating a global campaign. I didn't know anything about, I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew something was calling me to act. Mm-hmm. And in order for me to do that, I had to focus directly on this idea that if we collect these masks from around the world, we can then begin helping people recognize they're not alone, right? The other people are dealing with similar things that they're dealing with, and that if we can support them around developing themselves, we can actually change lives, right? If you recognize that you're dealing with something and somebody in your same city around is dealing with similar things, then you may be more willing to deal with your stuff in a healthy way. And that's how it all happened. That's how it all began to grow. And so we've collected at this point 42,000 masks and growing, you know?
Interesting. Well done.
Thank you, man.
So how can Nigerians join in this 100K mask challenge here in Nigeria?
Well, one of the things that we are trying to figure out is when I did that one workshop at the school there, it went really well. And I think it's really, how do we find, people on the ground who are willing just to make their own mask? There's a website, 100kmasks.com. They can go to, they can actually make the mask online. Our former model was our former, design of the tool was you print this card out, you write on the card, take a picture of it, you text it back to us. That's 5 extra steps. So we created an online digital web interface where people can draw their mask online, and then they submit it right there. They can download it if they want. They can not. They can share it on social media if they want. But it allows them to make masks digitally. And so the website is www.100, the letter K, masks.com. And that's our goal. I think Nigeria can help us share the tool with other educators who are trying to build connection with their students, or just to go on there and make their own mask and be a part of the movement, right? Recognize that you're not alone, that there are other people dealing with similar things you may be dealing with, and how do we begin building that connection together?
Nice. Now I'll go back a bit briefly to that point when you had quit your job and started teaching and you were failing at it. Now I know there are many people in that phase as well, people who are trying to pursue their passion, but it doesn't seem to be working. Perhaps they are failing at it. So what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, I would say, what had to happen in that moment was not to stop looking for why you're doing the work. When I became a teacher and I was doing a horrible job, I could have easily gone back and got an engineering job in a week. I could have been I quit. I could have gone and got an engineering job. I would have been making big money again. But something inside of me was this was not just a whim idea. This was a year of credential program that was confirming, yes, this is what I want to be doing. And so the fact that I'm in the work and I'm not feeling the fire, I think it was because I was feeling how challenging it was. I knew the math, but because I thought I knew the math, I thought that would make you a good math teacher. And it's really, the math is only such a small part. And some people would not agree with that, and that's fine. But what I experienced was that it's about relationships. And if you don't know how to build a relationship with a student, then some students, if they don't have a relationship with you, they will not learn from you. Some students, if you don't have to come to school, they're going to make up some homework for themselves, you know? But I'm talking about the kids who I was like passionate about were not the kids who were like making up their own homework assignments to do extra. I'm talking about the ones who were like there every day doing nothing. And so I knew that my passion was like finding those young men that were really, I think deep down similar to what I was going through, just going through things and trying to hold them in and them not really working out well. And I think for many of them, they didn't have their Miss BP, No Miss BP had found them yet. So it was like, well, maybe it's my chance. Maybe it's my chance to help them break free from whatever is kind of bonding them and holding them back. And that's how it happened. So I encourage anyone out there who is in that transition and trying to follow your heart and things are not going well is to just keep checking in with your heart. Like, is this what's calling me to do? And I think that deep down, I felt like I was called to do it. It wasn't like I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to do it and do a good job. So like when I was clear that I still wanted to do it, then I had to find out how to be successful at it. Because I was not willing to wait around and be a failure at it for years to get better. And that's okay. That's a learning curve of getting better, right? But my own personal expectations of myself was that no, you need to be doing well now. These kids can't wait for you to get better for 2 years. So you need to figure out what you need to do differently. So I knew that it wasn't my teaching in the classroom, it was relationship building. And some of those relationships you can build in the concept of a classroom. But for some young men, if being friends with the teacher ain't cool, they're not going to be friends with the teacher. You know what I'm saying? If being smart is not cool at the school, then they're going to act like they're not smart. And so I had to find out how to do it in a way that let them still feel cool and help build a relationship and a connection so that I could learn how to be a better supporter for them and a better advocate. And that's how it all started.
Okay. So it's about figuring out how to do what you want to do differently to still achieve your goals.
Yeah, and sometimes, not only see what you want to do differently, but maybe it's just sometimes it's just stick to itness, right? Like I'm impatient, right? Like you remember, I left a very high paying job to then become a teacher I wasn't being paid. So I wasn't used to being a failure. You know what I'm saying? Like that wasn't like something I felt good about. And if you got a bunch of students in your class who you're responsible to teach and they're failing, I took it personal. I took it as me failing, not them failing. Like I was like, what am I doing wrong? And so I think that because I had high expectations of myself. First of all, I was not willing to let it just be. Where I was like, oh, okay, they're just failing my class. I guess they don't want to learn. Now that's one context. In some ways, some people believe, but I didn't believe that. So my job was to figure out how to support them around that.
Okay. I think you said this in one of your TED Talks that you can only really come alive when you take your masks off. Could you talk about that?
Well, I think that when I talk about the mask, it's around this idea of who are you when you're at your best, right? Who are you? What's important to you? What are your values? And do you get to be that person all the time? Like, I think that idea is that to be able to come alive is like, I get to like speak my truth. This is who I am. This is the things I like. And sometimes when we go into work, we have to like be part of ourselves. We can only talk about certain things. So here I can talk about these things. And then over there I can talk about other things. And it's just like you begin to like have to compartmentalize yourself. Now, that makes sense for a lot of things. But if I'm coming to work or if I'm coming to my career and I'm just like feeling like I'm not fully myself, like how long does that last? I don't know. I was not willing to. I think it's a hard thing to do, right? Because at work you're supposed to be the professional. So how do you talk about the things that are fun for you or whatever? Some work environments, you can see more work environments today than they were 20 years ago, are like, how do we make a work environment fun and people get along and people are glad to be here, as opposed to like come to work, do your job, go back home, right?
Yeah.
If you look at Silicon Valley, most of these companies, it looks like Disneyland inside their building, because they recognize the value of people coming to to work feeling good about being there, and how productivity can go through the roof when you can create an environment like that. And I think that we need to create that environment for each other and for ourselves. And so if you're not in that environment, let's say you don't work at a fancy place like that, you just work in a place with 4 walls, but are you enjoying the 4 walls? You know, are you at least fired up when you walk into the building, or is it gloomy? Like I just knew that I wanted something different in life, and I was like willing to go after it. And I think that, luckily I didn't have a family at that time. I didn't have children. I didn't have a mortgage. I could make changes that were big financial changes in my life and not worry about like surviving still. So I think that there's some freedom in knowing that I had more room to make choices because I didn't have any dependents. You know, no one's depending on me necessarily for their livelihood. So I could make a choice that was a huge financial decision and still feel good about it, you know?
Okay. Just a curious question. So you mentioned then that when you made the decision, you didn't have a family, no dependents. Do you have now?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I hadn't seen anything on it when I'd done my research, so I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Happening anytime soon?
No, you know, I did a lot of raising of I think deep down as like there's a desire there, but also it's kind of like, yeah, you know, I've done a lot of raising already, you know.
Okay.
And I think that it may look different. It may be, you know, fostering parent, like a foster parent. It may be like adoption or something. I don't know. I don't really know. I have not. It's not something that I really take a lot of time to think about, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, but it's a question that definitely I think about it once in a while, but I don't spend a lot of time on it, you know? So maybe this end of the year reflection, I will begin spending some time. but
Okay.
I feel like this ever forward is like my child, you know? Like I have birthed this thing into the world, and it needs a lot of attention right now. And so I think if I had the other responsibilities, I couldn't put the time into my own personal development and growth. And so now I get to really be, you know, kind of thinking about me right now and thinking about my goals.
Ashanti will be talking about some of his mistakes and general life lessons shortly. Stay with us. I'm Ushaye, and you're listening to Origins Africa podcast. Hi there. Are you an entrepreneur, celebrity, innovator, executive, creator, religious leader, sportsman, or someone who's made and is making their dreams come true and would like to share it on Origins Africa podcast? Kindly send an email to originsafricapodcast@gmail.com or reach us via any of our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at OriginsAF. Your origin story matters. Let's inspire hope, one story at a time. If you like what you've listened to hitherto, click the subscribe button. For sponsorships, donations, and adverts, please send an email to originsafricapodcast@gmail.com. Also share your thoughts and feedback with us on social media pages, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at OriginsAF. Don't forget to follow us. Hiya. Welcome back to Origins Africa podcast. I'm Ushaye. So, the Ever Forward Club started in 2004. What were the mistakes and lessons Ashanti learned on his journey?
I don't know. Let's see. I mean, there's so many. That's an interesting question. I mean, because they can get so small, right? They get so small from forgetting to pay a bill, from not getting health insurance, from like I don't know. I mean, there's layers of them, right? So you know, when you're running a nonprofit, I think most people, when they start a business, you would imagine that they have a business plan, or they would have a structure that was gonna, you know, like I didn't know what I was doing when I started this organization. I didn't know anything about running no business. So I just started, I just went with the heart and trying to make it up. And I think that the surviving rate of nonprofits, or there's so many of them in California for sure, but there's some statistics out there about how long they last. I wish I had set up a better organizational structure. I wish I had, it's hard. That's the best way I can say it. It's hard to run a nonprofit. It's hard to have a business model where you're hunting for money, and you hope that you have enough to make sure you can pay everybody and yourself, right? And there's no so I think mistakes. I mean, there's so many mistakes. Like I look at our business structure and organization, like our board. I need to really be getting the board off and running and stronger. That's a goal for this first quarter of 2020. Like we got to get and I feel like a lot of times I think about mistakes. I think I'm constantly in a state of feel like I'm not doing a good job,
Oh, okay.
So because I work so hard, that's a hard feeling to accept, So I think I wanted to be further along in my life right now. I wanted to be further along in my career. So I think that sometimes it's it's hard to pinpoint individual failures.
Okay.
Because I think that sometimes it's working. On one hand, it's working, right? When I hear people congratulate me for where we've come as an organization, I feel good about that. When I hear people invite me to talk at their convention or whatever, I feel good about that. But I think also sometimes it feels like it's still not enough, So, yeah. So I'm trying to. It's hitting me pretty hard right now,
Yeah.
Something let me think about this. I think deep down, the idea is that when I was an engineer, I was clear because it was a constant reminders that you're smart, right? But I think in this work, it's kind of you're giving back to the community, you're seeing lives change, and I'm glad for those opportunities for the young people whose lives that we get to support. But then there's also part of it where you're is this enough? I'm definitely not satisfied currently in terms of where we are as an organization. I want to have an organization that's running a little more smooth. I think right now we're running. We're definitely running. I wouldn't say we're running smooth, but we're running. So it always feels like we're moving, So I think if you're constantly running, you're going to feel like you're in motion. Now the question is, are you in the best type motion? Are you in the best motion to have massive success? And so I think deep down is just it's been this journey for myself of what are my goals and dreams, and how do I continue to just keep going after them? I think I have big goals for the organization and for myself, and I think I'm finally starting to get to a place where I can just. I think one thing how do I describe this? I don't give myself enough credit. So I think after leaving engineering, here in America, teachers don't get a lot of respect, right? It's considered a very noble profession, but parents blame teachers, society blames teachers, so you get a lot of blame. Now, there's some bad teachers out there who deserve some blame, but the idea is that the profession is challenging and difficult, and I think that it requires a lot of heart. And so now that I'm running a nonprofit, I'm not a teacher anymore, but I mean, I'm always a teacher, but I'm always an engineer. But now that I'm running this nonprofit as a social entrepreneur, then it's like these different levels. So like, as a teacher, you have a small check, but you have a guaranteed check, right? When running a nonprofit, you got to make sure that there's a check, Like you don't get to sit back and just be like, okay, the money will come. I'm going to get a check either way. No. If you're not out raising the capital, then there is no job, right? And so that idea of like going after it, like leaving the guaranteed job, guaranteed check, right? Leaving that little safety net behind sometimes feels heavy. And so like when you ask that question, it's a very powerful question, because I think like I'm constantly thinking like I think it's only been the last I've only been hired Ever4 started in 2004, but I was a volunteer. So 2004 as a volunteer, I just did what I could do because I had a job. 2016, I'm the executive director. I'm the founder. Like I have not only a job, this is my job. And so it's more pressure to do good. And so I think that pressure, I don't always reflect on the heaviness. Yeah, that's all I got right now.
Okay, thanks for sharing that, Ashanti. So what values or principles do you live by that have helped you achieve the successes recorded today?
Just like hard work, like integrity, like commitment, like trust. I think I want, when I go do work with schools, like I'm not doing it. I'm clear with them about I'm not doing it for money, One of the challenges with that is that when you don't do the work for money, it's because it's also that people will take advantage of you.
Sure.
Right? So when I've learned not to really tell people I'm not doing it for money anymore, because when you say that, then they're like, oh, okay, then we can, pay you $500 to come and do this talk, even though normally they would pay somebody $7,000 to $10,000, right? And so I've learned that even though deep down I don't do it for money, I know that I don't need to tell them that, and I need to be really holding people to a responsibility to pay me what I'm worth. And I think that sometimes if an organization really says, Ashanti, we really just don't have it, like then I feel okay about lowering my rates or doing it for a rate that I normally wouldn't, because it's like out of respect, right? As opposed to like somebody saying, well, we can get you for a little because you don't want to charge anyway. I've learned that phrasing, as much as has some truth in it, it puts a barrier there. So I'm clear now with folks and about, no, this is how much our rates are. And then we let them, we learn how to negotiate. We're learning this as we go. We didn't plan to start having to negotiate with people around money. But when you realize you have to negotiate with people around money, then you have to be like, either I'm gonna get taken advantage of, or I'm gonna stand up and tell them how they should treat me. And those are just like the journeys right now, right? So like that's been really exciting, right? So now as the organization is growing and I get to build it, I get to like look at the other side and say, this is how we're gonna do this next phase, And that's been really exciting. That's been fun for us as a growing organization. So those values of like being really committed to the work, right? And I think the fact that I'm really committed to the work means that also I need to make sure that people who say they're committed to the work are treating us as professionals in the work. And so it's always about kindness. I mean, I think since I was younger, I never went out and tried to find problems, As a leader, your job is to identify problems, but I'm not looking for trouble. I'm not looking for having a battle with someone. And I tell my team, look, this email sounds a little bit rough, let's take a day before we respond to it and let's think it out, because, you can, if you're not clear about where you stand on stuff, then you can get sucked into other people's, traps, that they're setting out there. And I'm like, that's not really what we're about. We're about doing the work and making sure that young people around the world are able to find deeper meaning in their own self and value. And so that's what is important to me. Like, I think those are the values that I would say are the most strong.
Okay. What's the most important thing you've learned in your life?
Oh, man, I don't think I've learned it yet. I don't think I've learned them both. I think the most important thing to date that I've learned to date is just trust. Trust. Be willing to ask for help. Having good friends who you can turn to. I mean, if I'm going through some deep struggle stuff, I know some people who I can send a text to, and and I'm on a men's team who helps me through stuff, and just to know I got a place to go and people can hear me, right? That I can be heard, that no one's trying to fix me, but that I got a support system. So I think that is what I think the most important thing is learning how to ask for help and having a community of people around you who cheer for your success almost as much as you do or more, right? Because for me, as a person who doesn't often take time to celebrate success, it's helpful having people who can help reflect it back, Yeah.
Interesting. Now, writing on that, so when in life have you felt most alone?
Alone?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I think that's a great, a lot of times. A lot of times. I mean, I don't even, growing up, because I was the oldest and I didn't have a father there, there's lots of times. I can't even name them. The most alone, I would say, when was that? I would say when I came back after my second quarter in college and I had been placed on academic probation. It means that it means your grades were so low that you were going to be on probation, meaning that you had one more quarter to get your grades back up, or they would dismiss you from the university. And I was like, college was hard for me. As much as I thought I was smart, it was really hard because everybody's smart there. And the dorm was empty. Like, I came back 2 days early from winter break. It was raining, and I just remember getting that letter. And I was in my dorm room by myself in the whole building. Nobody was in the whole building. I mean, I was the only one there. And I really felt really alone. I felt like, how am I going to get through this? So it was one of those moments of like, either you stick it out or you go back home. And I was like, I am not going home. Not going back home until I have a degree in my pocket, And so I felt, it was a lot, that night I called my mom and I was telling her about the academic probation, and she was like, just put the letter away and get folk, and to make some decisions. And then put the letter away, and I got in action. And I was like, there's no going home. There's no going home. And so that, I would say that's one of those nights where I remember just literally, not only physically was I alone, there was no one there, but I just felt it, I think sometimes you can feel alone when there's a group of people around. This is one of those moments where I felt like two types of, it was up to me. But no one was going to do it for me. No one was going to make sure I passed my classes. It was up to me. So it was like feeling like this sense of like responsibility to get it together. And really,
Okay. Going back to the mask challenge, so what would you say are the masks that you do not really let people see?
I think I've already kind of hit on that through this call, right? Like talking about failures. Like, I don't really talk about failures. I don't talk about not feeling successful, I don't talk about. Yeah, so I've already kind of talked about it throughout this call. You know, it's I don't normally talk about those things. So it's only like in a time like this in an interview, someone hits me with a really tough question, and I'm like, whoa, I'm feeling that one right there. You know, like where it's like, okay, this stuff I don't normally talk about because it's causing an emotional charge in me. You know, and so things I talk about all the time are easy to talk about. I just like, oh yeah, this is how we started. This is what we did. When you ask me about my failures, it's like, yeah, I feel it again. Like it's still coming back up every time I say the word. So I think that's part of my work. It's part of my. So I think that because I can feel the charge around it, is like it's that belief, and some of my self talk. Some of the story I tell myself, and some of it is things that I just personally want to work on and achieve. And so I'm constantly pushing forward through that.
Okay. So if you could send a message to yourself 10 years ago, what would you tell the younger Ashanti?
10 years ago? That was before Instagram. I would have said, when Instagram comes out, kill it. Go in there and post every day. I would have been like 10 years ago, man. I would have been like, okay, there's going to be this thing called, this is 2019, 2010. So that was like, what 2000? That's back in 2010. It's a whole decade. Man, I would have been like, I don't know. I've probably been just like, write the book, and you need to just enjoy and keep working hard through the success, right? Like ride the momentum. Like you know, I think like if I had started writing my book back in 2010, it would be done by now because as slow as I'm going on it. But I think I don't know. I think I would just told myself like your story matters. Oh, like your story, man. I think everything's happened since 2010. Actually, I'm going to be doing an end of the year reflection. Like I look back at 2010, I'm like, wow, there's a lot has happened since then, you know? And most of it I couldn't have predicted, could not have predicted. So I'm just really excited about, actually that was 2009, right? 2009. Yeah. I'm like, wow. Keep going. Don't quit. Yeah, don't quit.
Okay. So now just some trick questions or some teaser questions or some sort of funny questions. So what's your favorite word?
A favorite word would be, I don't know, it'd be like, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, because I use that with teenagers a lot, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's like, do you know what I'm saying? It's actually 6 words, but it sounds like one word, you know?
Okay. What food do you wish didn't exist?
Ooh. Okra.
Why that?
I just don't do slimy foods, you know?
Okay.
Like slimy is like, I mean, I guess I could do without it because I don't really eat it, but I'm trying to think, what could I do? Yeah, I think okra. Like, it's just like such a, I don't know. That's just the only one I can think about.
And where is your favorite place?
My favorite place?
Yes.
Like, to go in my city or in the world?
In the world. Where's that one place that you love to go to, your favorite?
So I've probably been to Mexico maybe 20 times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have 2 godsons there. I speak Spanish. So it's close enough to, you know, California that I don't have to go so far. It's like 4 hours away. You know, for maybe 5 hours on a plane or something. But I just think that's a place that I spend most of my out of U.S. time, and I just have really good friends there. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you like to be remembered?
I think I would like to be remembered as a man who sacrificed his own worldly pleasures, his idea for helping give back to the world. And actually, I won't say sacrifice, because actually, I won't take it back. Actually, I didn't make a sacrifice. I actually just followed my heart. Actually, I would say it was none of the sacrifice. Before I was like following the money, and then I decided to follow my heart, and I'm clear that following my heart has brought me more joy than I ever could have imagined. Yeah.
For the listeners, is there any wisdom you'd want to pass on to them? What would you want them to know?
Well, there's a quote that we say at the end of our workshops that says, the longest distance that most people travel is the 18 inches between their head and their heart. And most people get stuck in their heads. And so when we give out a heart, or we show a picture of a heart, and we just say, every time you see a heart, a picture of a heart somewhere, just ask yourself, when was the last time you connected to your heart? And it's just a reminder for people to not get stuck in their heads, because our heads are doing their job to protect us or keep us safe, but our hearts are trying to make us connect. And I think in this world right now, we just need more people who are willing to connect. And so that's the invitation, I would say, is to stay connected to your heart in this overly stimulated, heady world. Don't forget your value. Don't use the hearts on your Instagram posts to tell you how much you're worth and how much you mean, and how important you are, how special you are. And stay connected to your heart. That's would be the message I would leave.
That was Ashanti Branch. He is the founder and CEO of the Ever Forward Club. To participate in the 100,000 Mask Challenge, kindly go to www.100kmasks.com. You can make your own mask online there. Fam, let's get Ashanti to 100,000 masks. Thanks so much for listening to our show this week. You can subscribe at wherever you get your podcast, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, amongst others. And whilst you're there, please do give us a review. You can also write to us at originsafricapodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to send a tweet, it's at originsaf. We would love to hear from you about how we're doing and where you'd like us to improve. Join us next time as we have a chat with Teniola Sego, co-founder and creative director at Clan, creative director at House of Diola.
You think that you've done so well. Like, you tell yourself, wow, amazing. This is me. I've done New York Fashion Week. So that's me and my sisters. And you come back home, and instead of people here to be like, well done, people are actually trying to, change the scene, trying to put Lagos on the map. We're hearing, what nonsense is this? My tailor can sew this. Who do they think they are? Is it because they're Diola Sego's daughters?
Our show was produced this week by Tomishi Ajani, whilst the theme song was composed by Just Ritimi. I'm Oshaya, and you've been listening to Origins Africa Podcast. Bye for now.
Whatever you do.